Hi, everybody. My name is Magrew. I'm a group product manager at ClassPass, and today I'm going to focus on building upon some of the concepts that have already been brought up by some of the previous speakers, but focusing on how we actually do this really efficiently in the product development process. So specifically around how we make time for experimentation and iteration. These are two really important steps, but oftentimes we skip them entirely or they come way too late in the game. So what prevents us from actually making time for iterative design and testing is, one, we may just lack the process for how to do this in general, or we think it just takes too much time, so we skip and move right to the next thing, the next big problem, which is we sometimes lead with the solution before we really understand the problem. I've heard a few people bring this up already today. So this is what a typical product development process might look like. You get people into a room, you talk about a problem, you identify a solution, you put that solution on a roadmap, you design it, you build it, you ship it, and then you finally get to the stage where starting to test it. But there's two big issues here. One is that your user testing comes way too late in the game. What if you didn't even build the right thing to begin with? And secondly, this is so expensive because this is a waterfall approach. So you never got a chance to taste test along the way and understand if you were on the right direction. You went ahead and baked that entire cake, which took a lot of time. So many of you are probably very familiar with this diagram from Marty Kagan that talks about the product discovery process. But the challenge here is that this can feel overwhelming or hard to do or just feel like it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm going to specifically talk about some aspects of how to incorporate this into the design process, and then when you're shipping, how to iterate at that point. So I'll give you an example at ClassPass. We connect our members with fitness experiences. But in the past year, we've started to expand on what we focus on, and we've introduced what we call wellness experiences. So you can think of things like massages and facials. While this might sound the same as a fitness experience, it actually posed a really big issue in our UI. Our UI is designed to organize experiences by time, but a massage, for example, can have multiple different types, different durations, take place every 15-minute increment. And the problem with that is that it ended up flooding our UI and degrading our experience for everyone. So we needed to come up with a solution that would make this better in our product. So how did we do this? We started by first just breaking down what the problem is that we're trying to solve for. Really try to understand the opportunity and what is our goal. And the other big thing here is you want to know what are your key metrics for success here. Big tip here is align on this with your stakeholders early. You might find you're on very different pages before you kick off your project. Next, while it might feel really natural to identify what your solution is, resist that urge and go really, really wide first. Come up with lots of different concepts. This is where things like paper prototypes are really key. Going back to the efficiency thing, you don't need high fidelity prototypes in this point. It's actually really better if it's really low fidelity because it gives you time to iterate. If you're having a hard time coming up with concepts, we took a page out of the design sprint book, and we actually got our team together, time boxed it for 2 hours, had a pile of paper, spent some time doing wireframe sketching on paper, put them up on the wall, and started organizing themes. This was a great way to kick off the concepts and come up with lots of ideation really fast. Next, when you're ready to start to take some of those ideas, anywhere between 3 and 5 tend to be a really good place to start. And you can turn those into really rough prototypes that you're ready to start testing with your customers. So a key here is, for efficiency later, is bring your stakeholders into this part of the process. If you can bring them along the journey of how you're getting your insights, it really helps down the line once you've come up with your solution. Another efficiency tip, this was a big aha moment for me this year, is that you actually don't have to run really long tests to get good results. It's actually better if you run many small tests with no more than 5 users. After 5 users, your return on investment starts to degrade. So this actually means that if you only have to test with 5 users, you can run many tests very efficiently and try lots of different concepts out. So taking that in mind, that means that if you have a week, for example, in a single day, you could run 5 tests for 30 minutes each within 3 hours. Then the next day, you can assess that feedback, iterate on your designs, and do it all over again the next day. Within a week, you've probably tested anywhere from 10 to 15 or more concepts, and you have some really good direction in terms of how you can move forward. So now that you've identified a really viable solution, 2 big keys here to make sure that you cut down on any problems down the line and make sure this is efficient is one, make sure you evangelize your learnings with your stakeholders, help them understand how you got to your solution, backed by your user testing. And secondly, do a kickoff with your engineers to make sure they understand the product that they're building. This will ensure that you're all on the same page as you're moving forward. Another big tip, oftentimes we wait to come up with our test plan until right when we're ready to ship, and this becomes a problem because it may actually increase the scope depending upon how you're going to roll out your feature. So align on this early. Going back to that example I gave you from ClassPass with wellness, this is the stage we're at right now. So we've kind of gone through that whole process of identifying viable solutions. We have a great solution. We're in the process of implementing it. We feel really confident in it. And now we need to design our test plan so we can get data as we start to roll it out. And when you're ready to roll it out, you can just pick one process for how you actually want to validate your results. We've tried things like feature flags or permissions in our process so we can run an A/B test, or we've used things like Optimizely that let us run really efficient tests and validate the results along the way. But the key is you just need to pick one thing. When it's time to ship, remember, you still need to test at this phase. So my biggest point here is make sure you bake in time for iteration on your roadmap from the start. Just assume you're going to have to iterate once you get to this point, even if you've done user testing early on. And at this point, it's much more efficient to actually keep iterating on your product than to go all the way and start from scratch. You've already invested a lot of time here, so keep moving forward. These are two helpful tools I'm sure many of you have read and are familiar with, the Google Ventures Sprint, as well as Marty Kagan's Inspired. The tip here, though, is that it's helpful to reread these every year or so. You're going to pick up on different processes you may have completely forgotten about, and it also will just help with efficiency along the way. So lots of great tools here. Even if you've read it, read it again. So finally, remember that you generally won't get your solution right the first time, the second time, or the third time. But if you start by really understanding your problem, make time for user testing up front before you get too deep, and just bake in time assuming you're going to need to iterate, you're going to set yourself up for success in the end. Thank you.